Olsen skies one high and deep to right field toward the corner. Adele onto the track near the wall, leaps up and got it. Makes the catch for out number 3. Olsen. On it goes. Which is hit out towards center field. That's smoke. That is going to be into the bushes. A 2-run home run for McCutcheon. And the Phillies take a 2-0 lead.
Here's another 3-2 going again as Soto hits one high in the air, right center field. Brinson near the wall, leaps, and he makes the catch! Lewis Brinson makes an unbelievable catch over the wall in center field.
Welcome in to an all-new edition of Belly Up Fantasy Baseball Live. I am your substitute host, Vince Stover, joined and surrounded by Philadelphia fans. We'll introduce first. The batting leadoff and coming in at 5'2", 392 pounds. Nick. Sorry, Nick, I don't know your actual number, so I apologize for that. But Nick's with us again. Nick, how you doing?
Good. I'm a little taller than what you posted me at, but yeah, but I think the weight's right about the same.
Okay. And batting cleanup for us today, he's the head of Belly Up Baseball. It's Dan D'Amico. Dan, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. Always a good day when the Phillies can pull out a win when I had no hope for them. That's the new direction of the Phillies. Me giving up and then them actually doing something good.
Well, there you go. Hey, we should have given up a long time ago.
Girardi did.
Our regular host, Kevin, will be with us possibly later on in the program. But it's going to be us three, the three amigos here to kick us off today. And we've got plenty to talk about. We're going to start off with the brawl. You know, we've got a lot of ceremonial fights in baseball, but this one was an actual real fight. Punches were thrown. Los Angeles Angels and the Seattle Mariners go after it after Winker gets hit, and supposed retaliation over a near hit yesterday. And they went after the manager. They went after everybody else, throwing punches and everything like that. For what it's worth, I thought it was very entertaining. Nick, we'll start with you. The fight. Did you win your bet? And what did you think of the actual brawl going on there, Seattle, Los Angeles?
No, I did not win my bet, but that's okay. I thought it was warranted. You know how they say baseball players they check themselves. Well, sometimes they get a little too out of hand. But again, if you're throwing at the player and you go to the head, that's a different story. You know, I read the article. Mike Trout said, "Hey, you know, if you're gonna hit me, but hit me in the ribs, not in the head. You know, that's like the no zone, or I forget what he said." So then it escalated into this huge, bench clearing brawl, like actual brawl, not him pushing around and standing around and talking, like actual throwing punches. And I don't forget which player it was. He had an injured right hand, so he pushed people around with his left hand. And then Iglesias comes out and says, "You know what? I don't like these sunflower seeds," and he throws them all over third baseline. So we don't know what's going to come out of that. What suspensions? I haven't heard anything yet. I don't know if you guys did, but So it is what it is. They check themselves.
8 players ejected. They've played 8 times in 11 days, Dan. And you got a division rival. I guess you could use the word rival, playing that many times in that short amount of time, and then you've got someone throwing at the superstar. You have to expect some kind of retaliation, right?
And there was many pitches thrown up around a really good player. Mike Trout last night, the ball up near his head. Julio Rodriguez in the first inning today, ball near his head. Jesse Winker gets hit, and the Mariners are rightly not happy about it. Like Nick said, this was not a pushing and shoving. This was a fight. This was you would have seen a hockey rink, and it was not out of place. And when two teams that have failed to live up to expectations so far this year. Now late in June, they're going to get frustrated, especially when you're playing them so much.
Yeah, I agree that when you have that much seeing each other that many times in an already non-friendly somewhat environment there, I'm still surprised by how aggressive the fight was compared to, I mean, because typically baseball fights is, hold me back. Yeah, it's not a whole lot of real action. And they went after the manager, I mean, pushed him up against the fence and punches were swung. It was pretty intense. So I'm assuming we're going to see some pretty big suspensions here. You got the 8 guys that got ejected. Then, like Nick said, Iglesias comes out. He throws sunflower seeds. I believe he also threw bubble gum.
I think he did, yeah.
So you got to assume there's an extra game thrown on for that. And then other things. So what are we looking at suspension-wise? So what should it be versus what we think it'll be, Nick?
Well, depending on who did what, I think you're going to get a range of maybe 3 to 6 games, perhaps. And when you're talking about baseball, that's not a whole lot. Whereas if it's like football, but like 360, I think the one that's going to be most egregious is going to be Iglesias. I think he'll get the worst of it because he actually, after things were settled, he actually re-escalated it and threw stuff back on the field. And then, of course, whoever throws the first punch is going to get the worst of it too. So I think Winkler and then Iglesias are going to get the worst of it, and then everybody else is just going to get like a game. And then, of course, you have baseball where you can play through your appeal. So the suspensions might not even happen until after the All-Star game.
Yeah, I think you're looking at one game for most of the guys, and then, like you said, anywhere from 3 to 6. Once they look at the video and see punches being thrown, you're going to miss at least 3 games, I would think. Dan, what are your thoughts on the suspensions?
Yeah, the guys that were caught throwing punches will miss a series. The Angels pitcher, Wentz, should probably miss 2 starts. It's hard to suspend pitchers because you just put your start back a day, and they normally don't miss anything. So I think Wentz should be forced to miss 2 games that he would have normally started. He threw twice. 2 different pitchers, 2 different hitters in 2 innings. That's ridiculous. And then Rendon obviously can't get suspended or won't get suspended because he's not playing for the rest of the year, but he might have landed the cleanest shot. Yeah, he might get suspended for 3 games to start the next season because he open hand slapped Jesse Winker with his left hand, and Jeff Passan actually made a pretty good point. That was probably the second best thing he's done left-handed this year after a home run left-handed when the Angels were up big earlier in the season.
Oh man, I'm sure he'll get fined at the very least if he doesn't get suspended. Well, yeah, I could carry over into next year.
Yeah, that's the thing too. I'm sorry, Vince. What Dan said, when you miss games for pitchers, it's no big deal. It should be starts for them because they're not an everyday player. So it should be 3 to 6 starts for the pitchers, and then of course the regular season games for everybody else.
Be interested to see what they hand down there. Something else that carried over into today: the no-hitter from Houston against New York. New York hitless until the walk-off today. So a long drought there for New York. But you look at this thing. We've talked about it in past episodes. I am not a fan of calling it a no-hitter when it's multiple pitchers. Yes, there were no hits. I look at it more of an against the batters versus pro for the pitchers, although it is an accomplishment. So I'm not trying to knock anything that Houston did, but they were able to hold New York hitless for an entire game in an AL battle that we might very well see in the AL championship later on down the road. Dan, let's go to you on this one. Yankees hitless for a game, almost for 2 straight games. Is there how much should we celebrate no hitters when it's multiple pitchers combined no hitters?
Well, I think it's like you said, and we talked about this when the Phillies got no hit earlier in the year. It really is the Yankees didn't get a hit, not that the Astros held them to no hits. And that's very surprising. The Yankees haven't been no hit since 03 and now twice since the 50s, and both have been the Houston Astros. And it's really odd for a Yankees team that can't seem to stop hitting and stop scoring runs. They want no hit, and then we're no hit, I believe, through 6 today, only to go and win the game and look exactly like they have been for most of the year. But the Astros are really good, and it's a thing where it almost feels like we've stopped appreciating how good the Astros are because of the cheating scandal. Now that they don't have Carlos Correa, don't have George Springer. The Astros are still really good, and on the Yankees, they look like the second best team in the American League. So I kind of agree with you, Vince. This could very well be an American League Championship Series we see later on.
Yeah, I mean it's either Houston or the Guardians, but we'll get to that later. Nick, the combined no hitter. What are your thoughts on it? How much should we celebrate it?
I think we should still I think we should still put the same weight on it. In effect, it's still a no hitter. And you could also look at it this way. Oh, it just wasn't one guy. It was every pitcher that we rolled out there. So it's a no-hitter. I don't know if you want to put asterisk on it or if you want to call it something else. I mean, other than a combined no-hitter. But should it be celebrated? Yeah, it should still be celebrated. But how much weight do you want to put behind it? I believe that's up to the everyday fan. But again, Houston's celebrating it just as if it was one player, so they're happy about it. Anytime you get a no hitter against the Yankees, you should have a parade the next day.
Well, I don't know if there's any more room for asterisks in the record book next to the Astros, but we could throw another one on there if we need to. And yeah, the Astros, like you said, Dan, great team still. They've got a good pitching staff. They've got some young talent, some veteran talent there as well, and they continue to impress. Granted, the AL West has not been super impressive this year, but let's go ahead and get to that, I guess. What we're looking at here so far, it is the Yankees in the AL East still running away with it, 11 games up on Boston, but Boston, who not that long ago it seems like was under 500, now they're second place in the division. Tampa and Toronto right there close by as well. I think we would all agree the Yankees win this division and are the favorites in the AL. But what are these other three teams in the East? What can they accomplish this year? How dangerous are they? Boston, Tampa, and Toronto. Dan, let's start with you.
Well, they're all very dangerous. They've got Boston, Toronto, the most star-studded rosters in the league. And as I've been saying for weeks on this show, I am not going to underestimate the Tampa Bay Rays until they prove that they shouldn't be considered a good team. So they're all teams that could very much win a series. And if they go up against the Astros and one of these teams beats the Astros in a 5-game or 7-game series, we're not going to look at it and be like, hey, that was a crazy result. Because Vladimir Guerrero Jr. plays for the Blue Jays. He's unbelievable. Rafael Devers has been one of the best hitters in the league all year. And Shane McClanahan should probably win the AL Cy Young right now. He's unbelievable. The Rays have probably 5 pitchers I've never heard of that have ERAs under 2 right now. All three of those teams, the Blue Jays, Red Sox, and Rays, are very capable of not only making the playoffs, but beating the Astros, beating the Yankees, and potentially going to a World Series.
Nick, what's your thoughts on those 3 teams? Is there one that you're not scared of, or are all 3 of them dangerous in your eyes?
I am not right now. I'm not scared of Toronto because I just think that they're too far back. They're more than 12 games back, and at this point, if you're 12 games back heading into the All-Star break, you got to make up a lot of ground. Now I'm just looking at Boston's schedule. What's it? The 26th? Okay, so today they beat Cleveland. All right, then they go to Toronto for the next 3, and then when they roll into July rather. As soon as my computer wants to think, they go to the Cubs, who aren't that good, and then they go to the Rays and then Yankees. and that's who over the next 2 weeks in June they got the Rays and the Yankees. So if this is the time that they're going to make a move, it's now. So again, they got to make up 11 games. But I could say that they would contend, and like Dan said, it always seems like Tampa Bay always comes out of nowhere. So, but again, they're 12 and a half games back, so they got to make up a lot of ground, and it just seems like they're not the team that they used to be 2-3 years ago. So, but again, they got nobodies. But right now, Boston is going to be the team that the Yankees got to at least keep an arm's length on. Because every other team in that division, they got some breathing room in the AL East.
Boston, Tampa, and Toronto would all be first place in the AL Central right now, and they would all be second place in the AL West right now. But yet they're all within a game and a half of each other, and double digits out from the leader in the AL West. Let's go to the AL Central. Minnesota leading the division right now. Cleveland was tied with them just a couple days ago. They're 2 games back now. They're losing to Boston. And then Chicago is still sputtering back there. I know we've talked about Chicago many times on the program about the need for a new manager there. So let's talk about the top 2 teams, Minnesota and Cleveland. The Guardians have been super impressive. They've had some stud young guys this year, Quan being probably the most mentionable of them. And Ramirez has been phenomenal. Again, one of the best players in the American League as well. But then you got Minnesota, who quietly has a very, very good roster, decent pitching staff when healthy, and maybe they're getting their guys back right now. Bundy I just slipped my mind. Sonny Gray there in Minnesota are doing some work. So AL Central thoughts, Dan D'Amico.
Well, I think the Guardians are – I'm shocked how good they've been this year. I honestly thought they were going to finish below the Royals. That was a miss. I'm okay admitting that. The Royals have been terrible. The Guardians have been very good. And Jose Ramirez is seemingly doing it by himself in the lineup. Yeah, Stephen Kwan has been great. Ahmed Rosario, especially over the last 2 weeks, has been fantastic. But the pitching staff has led the Guardians. I mean, Shane Bieber has been fantastic. Tristan McKenzie, outside of his poor start this past week, has been fantastic. Cal Quantrill, Eli Morgan, Zach Plesac, they've all been amazing. And then you get to the 9th inning and you get Emmanuel Clase. You get 102 breaking in on your hands if you're left-handed, or running away like it's a slider if you're right-handed, which just doesn't seem fair. And they've done it. They've done it with pitching, and that's and enough hitting from Jose Ramirez, and that's the formula they look like they're going to stick to, and hope they can sneak into the playoffs. They have to catch one of the AL East teams right now, or the Twins. And the way they're playing right now, the way Jose Ramirez is playing right now, I wouldn't be too shocked if they did it, because I don't trust the Twins as much as thought I did at the start of the year. Buxton's good. Buxton's fantastic. Correa is really good. The lineup outside that is average. I like Cleveland's pitching better than I like Minnesota's. So I actually like Cleveland to catch the Twins, as amazing as that statement is and how little I want to say it. I think the Guardians are good and possibly the best team in the AL Central.
Maybe we have a Charlie Sheen, Bob Uecker reunited, Major League 5 or 4, whatever's the next one on the list. I don't know. Dan, before we get to Nick's thoughts on this, Cleveland, they've got to be buyers, right? Here coming into the All-Star break, and maybe looking to add a piece or two through the trade market.
If it wasn't the Cleveland Guardians and it was another team in the exact same scenario with the exact same roster, I'd say absolutely they do. But I have no faith that the Cleveland Guardians will be buyers at the trade deadline. Okay. They've shown the willingness to go out and fight for that playoff spot. Maybe that changes this year, but like with the Rays, I will be wrong about this before I take a leap and say the Cleveland Guardians are going to be aggressive and maybe, God forbid, add payroll to their team to make it better.
Okay. Nick, AL Central, who's going to win it? You got the Twins, you got the Guardians, you got the White Sox 5.5 back right now. What are your thoughts on the AL Central?
I'm going to call the Guardians because I just looked at their schedule. The next 4 games, they play the Twins, and then one of those games is a doubleheader. I think they're going to at least take 3 of those games. And, and it's weird because I'm looking at their roster, I'm looking at their stats. Their numbers are not sexy at all. It's just they just play small ball. I mean, their leading home run hitter is Ramirez with 16, and he's got the most RBIs with 63. And, you have other players on their teams doing almost double that, and they're way back in the standings. So I'd say Cleveland. I like Tito. I think he takes his team in the right direction, and I think with him, once they got the stranglehold on the division, they got the foot on the gas. They're just going to go for it because again, their pitching staff is doing the job, and they're hitting just well enough to score enough runs. So again, I say Cleveland wins it, and I'll even go a hot take here. I don't think La Russa finishes the season.
He shouldn't. I know that much. We've hammered that one, I think, the last couple of weeks. AL West, we won't spend time on. It's just a disappointing division. Texas is in second right now. They're 3 games under 500, 10.5 games back. The Angels continue to disappoint. The Mariners continue to disappoint. And Oakland is right where we thought they would be, 25-49. Let's move to the National
League. They don't have a roster.
Well,
they don't spend money on their roster, so what do they expect is going to happen?
Yeah, that's a good point. National League East, Mets still lead the division, 4.5 up on Atlanta. Atlanta has looked really, really good as of late. Scary moment today, Ronald Acuna foul ball off his foot. Sounds like they're not too concerned about it. They got a day off on Monday, so they feel pretty confident he'll be fine from there, but it didn't look great when it happened. But Atlanta's been driving that. They're going through some injury issues right now as well. Ozzie Albies out for pretty much the entire season, it seems like. And Orlando Arcia steps in, by the way, who I was a huge fan of in his days in Milwaukee. But he's not a great bat. He's a phenomenal defender, not a great bat. So I'm not sure what he adds to this team. Dan, I know you both of you are Phillies fans, but I was on my show last week, and I said I think Atlanta catches New York eventually and takes over here in this division.
Yeah, and the Mets the problem with that is the Mets have a pretty schedule coming up. They've got 2 against the Astros week, who just beat them twice last week as well. But then the Mets have games against the Rangers, Reds, and Marlins before coming to the All-Star break with the series against the Braves. So the Mets are looking, they should win 50 games before the All-Star break. And the Braves have a little bit of a tougher stretch, not too much. They've got the Phillies coming up this week. Then they get to play the Reds. But then they've got the Cardinals and the Nationals twice, along with the Mets series. So it looks pretty open right now. The Braves have been playing fantastic baseball. The Mets have kept up playing really good baseball, even without Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom, both of whom are getting closer to returning, which is a scary proposition for the Braves and the Phillies trying to run them down. But the Braves have been fantastic, and they won a World Series last year. They clearly have the talent to catch the Mets. I'm always a fan of the Mets collapsing late in the year. And that's probably what happens again this year, just because it says Mets on the front of their jersey.
Yeah, we welcome into the show now Kevin Wilson. Kevin, welcome in. Thanks for taking the time to join us. I know you had to settle some legal issues between the Angels and the Mariners earlier, so we thank you for taking the time to join us today.
It's always a pleasure. Sometimes I just have to, as you said, take care of business, which I did. So here I am.
Nick, we're talking NL East. Again, I know you're a Philly fan, and I'm not sure how homer you can be or cannot be in this situation, but When you look at the AL East, what do you look at the top? Was it Mets? Is the Braves going to catch them, or are the Marlins going to make a huge run here in the second half of the season?
Okay. To answer your question about the Marlins, I'm going to go with a hard no on that one. Philly, man, I would love to be Homer. They won today, Dan. I don't know if you saw it today, but they won today. They won 8-5. I would say with Harper out, I'm going to say, and we don't know how long he's going to be out, and it sucks to say that because one guy is out, the whole team falls apart. But whenever he's not in that lineup, but he's not hitting, the team kind of does fall apart. So I can't count on Hoskins to step up. Schwarber hit a go-ahead home run today. And then the Braves. The Braves. I'm going to go with the Braves because I'll tell you what, like Dan said, the Mets fall apart. The Mets need an acronym because the Cubs acronym is completely useless by September. The Mets need something because they always crap all over themselves by September. So, but the Braves play the Phillies the next 3 games. Then whenever we roll into July, if my computer wants to work, they go to the Reds. There's 3 wins right there. So I'd say they take 2 out of 3 out of Philly. They sweep the Reds. Then they're home 4 against the Cardinals. I say they take 2 or 3 out of that. Then they sweep the Nationals. Then they play the Mets. And then this is when the wheels start to fall off of the Mets cart. And then they go play the Nationals again, and then we go to the All-Star break. So I say by the time the All-Star break rolls around, Atlanta is in first place by 2 games.
The Mets mostly excellent till September. There you go. It's the best I can.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Kind of time.
And it was clean. Good. I like that one.
Mine are always clean, Nick. I'm here for the family. Kevin, NL Central. I'm a Brewers fan. I'm Brewers biased. There's no doubt about that. I said from the beginning of the year, St. Louis is the only one that could contend, and right now they've been contending. Milwaukee takes the lead back today. Milwaukee's not been healthy, right? They're get Woodruff back either I think Tuesday or Wednesday. He'll be pitching against Tampa. So they get him back. But St. Louis has been really solid. And, we'll get to the fantasy stuff in a minute. But guys like Goldschmidt and Arenado are doing what they're supposed to do. Now, Flaherty went down, got pulled early again. But what are your thoughts on the NL Central, Kev?
Well, if the Brewers, as you've mentioned, are healthy, I think they would take that division pretty easily. But they haven't been healthy. And the Cardinals, I didn't know really what to make out of the Cardinals before the season got started. But as you mentioned, they're playing solid ball. They couldn't possibly get anything more out of Goldschmidt. They couldn't possibly get anything more out of Arenado. And so they're getting all over the place. And, this is a sentimental say la vie to Pujols and Molina.
Yeah.
And so everybody's playing hard for them. But if Milwaukee's healthy, and I'm pretty sure you'd agree with this, Vince, that they take this division especially if they can get Peralta back some point in the season. He's on my IL, and I know he's probably out for a little bit still, but.
Yeah, he is, but they've already been playing catch with him. So he's actually already throwing again, which is a positive sign. And their intention is to get him back, get him a few starts before the playoffs begin is the goal right now with him, which would be huge for them for sure. And I think Milwaukee, outside of the Yankees, outside of the Dodgers, and maybe San Diego, I guess maybe the Mets, they're a very complete team is what I mean to say. They've got starting pitching.
And they've got the best closer in the business. So, once you get to the 9th inning, well, they got the 8th guy too. They got the 8th inning. They got the 9th inning lockdown. If they come into the 8th, 9th inning with the lead, the other team might as well just stay in the dugout because they're going to.
They got Corbin as well, who can just fire it in there at will.
Yeah, Burns is awesome. Let's move on to the NL West. Dodgers still leading the division, but I got to tell you, Dan, I was talking to my dad about this on our program, and I said today, San Diego, they're winning injured, and they get Tatis back, and they get Machado fully healthy again. Is this team better than the Dodgers, Dan?
If they could continue to get the production they're getting without Tatis and Machado, it certainly looks like it. And Tatis can come back, and maybe Tatis plays DH. That might be the smartest thing for the Padres to do. I know he's a great defender, but boy, does he like to dive and make great plays, which is awesome to watch. I have to imagine, Padres fan, you hold your breath every time you see him leave his feet and try and dive. But if Tatis and Machado come back and Machado keeps hitting like he was, and Tatis looks like he has for his entire career, it's hard to think that the Padres can't overtake the Dodgers, especially when Joe Musgrove is pitching the way he is. He looks like Musgrove should start the All-Star game for the National League. Yu Darvish has looked his best in a couple of years, as long as I can remember. He's looked really good. And Taylor Rogers, even with his struggles in June, is near the top of the league in saves and had been mostly reliable for his entire career. And that's a good recipe for winning baseball games. And the Dodgers have shown that they can drop series to really bad teams. They've dropped 2 series to the Pirates last month. So the Dodgers look human, and the Padres are keeping with them. So this is what we thought we were going to get last year. We got it between the Dodgers and the Giants. The Giants won out. I don't think there's a reason the Padres can't do the same thing.
Kevin, you're a Dodgers fan. Give you the chance to speak. What do you think?
Okay, this is what I have to say to whether or not the Padres are a better team than the Dodgers. This is what I have to say. Ready? Okay. Okay, I didn't mean to give you a double shot of booze on that one, but this is the dog days of summer, and the Dodgers have been human, as you mentioned, but we all know that they're the Dodgers, and they're still in first place, even though they've got next to nothing out of Max Muncy. They've got next to nothing out of Bellinger, and they've got next to nothing out of Turner over at third base. So, despite all of that, they're in first place. Clayton Kershaw was hurt, and then now he's back, and Walker Buehler is still out. Despite all that, they're still winning their division, and there's not a team that can make, maybe the Yankees, but besides them, there's not a team that can go out and get what they need other than the Dodgers. They've got the resources, they got the farm system. So the Dodgers, I'm going to say it right now, are still going to win their division.
All right, Nick, break the tie. Dodgers or Padres? Or Giants?
I'm going to say welcome to 2019. It's going to be the Yankees and the Dodgers in the World Series one more time. I don't care what the Dodgers don't have. They keep winning, and they're going to continue to do so. Their schedule, the next 3 games, they go to Colorado, and then they play Pittsburgh, I believe.
No, they already played Pittsburgh twice, so they're not playing them.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Yeah, they're done with. Fortunately for the Dodgers, because as Dan pointed out, the Pirates are world beaters when it comes to the Dodgers.
I'm sorry. They go to Colorado, then they go to San Diego. No, I'm sorry. San Diego comes up to L.A. It doesn't matter. I say
it doesn't matter because the Padres are always the little kids to the Dodgers.
Yes, little brother. Right. So and then they play Colorado again, and then they play the Cubs, and then they play the Cardinals. Which so in the next 15, 16 games, they're going to have trouble with maybe 4 of them. So I think they could go 8-4. No. 8-4, 10-6 over the next 16,
okay.
which is pretty good.
I can buy that, Nick. I'm all down. Nick.
So And then after they
That's
play,
expert analysis right there, Nick. So
it's bias analysis, but that's fine. And then after St. Louis, they go to the Angels. They walk across the street and they play the Angels, and they're going to beat up on them too, except for when Shohei pitches. So they'll be fine. I think
I agree.
The Dodgers will win the series, and then after the All-Star break, they host the Giants, and then we know what that is all about.
Right.
Dodgers close out their season 6 straight games against the Rockies. That's the end of the season. So they'll have a 6-game stretch against the Rockies. But the rest of September looks like the Mets, the Padres, the Giants. They'll get the Diamondbacks in there as well, and the Cardinals. So you're looking at schedule now, which I don't think they're going to pull away now. They might continue to stay in the league.
Oh, no. They're the Giants and the Padres
are
too good to pull away.
It's going to be slim, yeah. Are those games against Colorado, are they home or are they in Colorado?
I believe they're split, 3 at home, 3 on the road. And for what it's worth, the Dodgers are currently second in the National League to the New York Mets. I think that Yankees are the favorite in the AL, but I'm not sure the Dodgers can make it out of the NL. It's going to be a tough playoff in the NL this year, whether it be Atlanta, New York, Milwaukee, St. Louis, San Diego, LA, San Francisco, whoever it is. It's going to be a tough battle. Philadelphia, if they make it in as well from there.
It depends on health, Vince. We could talk Machado. We don't know what's exactly is going on with him. And as Dan and I talked to last week, Tatis not looking good. And Dan didn't want to hear that because he's on his team and he's on his IL. And he's been pushed back. That's the only news you get out of Tatis right now. His recovery's been pushed back. That's never a good sign.
Well, but it can be pushed back because they're right in the hunt. There's no reason to rush them back. It's better to have them fully healthy than partially healthy at this point.
Right, they just need to keep the motorcycles away from it. That's all it is.
Let's get into some fantasy talk. We had 8 call-ups this week, including Riley Green, O'Neal Cruz, Jeter Downs, Mark Appel, of course, the big story coming up as well. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on prospects and fantasy baseball. When we're not talking about Dynasty League, we're talking about just a regular one season at a time league. Do you take a swing at these prospects? And if you do, is there a specific one or two that you really like? So let's start with Kevin on this one. I don't know if you had a chance to look at this or not, Kev, so I'm kind of putting you on the spot. But of these call-ups, not just the guys this week, but here recently, we've got a lot of these guys starting to make their debuts this season. Are you going for those guys or are you avoiding them?
Well, I'd have to say that in our league, especially in our league, because it's a 10-person league, and we don't need to take big swings in a 10-person league. And so, all these guys coming up, they're all exciting, and they're rookies, and you want them to do well and all that. But as far as me going out and getting one of them and putting them on my fantasy team, that's not something that I'm going to do more often than not. And so, because these guys come up and unless you're Julio Rodriguez or one of those guys like that, you could come up and be down the next day. And there's a guy that we could talk about. I'm sure we're going to talk about it. And that's Alex Kirilloff. Now, look what's been happening with this guy. He's a guy that's been heralded as being the next greatest outfielder that's ever come down the highway. And that's been going on for a year and a half now. And he comes up, he doesn't do it, and he gets dropped down to AAA. Now he's back up in the major leagues right now, and he has had 4 RBIs in his last 2. And I know I'm getting ahead of ourselves because we're going to talk about specific guys, but he's not a guy that I'm going to trust a whole lot because he just has not demonstrated that he can stay in the major league.
Dan, prospects, you for them, against them when it comes to fantasy baseball?
I am for them when they play well, obvely. But it all depends because
what a politician's answer.
It all depends. Like Kevin said, there are prospects that come up and start hitting really well, and they catch fire, and then they win Rookie of the Year. And there are those prospects like Alex Kirilloff, like Jared Kelnick in Seattle, who just need more time to figure it out. But a guy like O'Neal Cruz, I saw him throw the ball 97 miles an hour from shortstop almost through the Pirates' first baseman. I went to pick him up, and he was owned in all of my leagues already. He had went up like 40% in a day. And I don't blame anyone that picked him up because he's got all the talent in the world. He just needs to put it together. And when you're looking at the fringes of your fantasy roster, if you can get a guy that has all the talent in the world that has a chance to be a really major contributor, I think that the guy you take a chance on. That's why I drafted Bobby Witt Jr. You didn't know how he was going to play. He struggled mightily to start the year. We talked about him a lot in April, and he's turned in a really solid season now for the Royals, and I'm glad I stuck with him. So when you're talking, and Adley Rutschman, he was like Vince. You drafted him, you went out, and then he was pretty poor for the first couple weeks. But now he's starting to hit the ball better. He's getting comfortable, and he's finding his groove. So when you've got, I think you reserve it for the top 10 to 15 prospects, guys that have real shots to be superstars. That's when I think you can take a chance on a prospect, especially if you have a need at that position.
Nick, your thoughts on the prospects? Do you like them?
I would say in your thinnest positions. So I would go pitcher and I would go catcher. And then everything else in between is going to be a hunt. Is going to be a wait and see, because pitcher, if they don't pan out, if they're starters, especially, they pitch once every 5 days. And then catcher's thin. You can rotate one out. But with me being in a 14 team league, my waiver roster is very, very thin as it is. So I can't necessarily afford to go ahead and say, you know what, this guy sounds real promising. He looked real good in the minors, and then he comes up and then he's hitting goose eggs for a week. I can't afford that. So I'm going to give you a no on the position players except for catcher, and I'll give you maybe on pitcher, because again, pitchers, you have 13 of them, and then you can rotate them in one and out. So,
I'm a huge fan of prospects in fantasy baseball. I got a 12-man league I'm in, so I'm different than you, Nick, in the sense that I not only can I afford it, I need somebody to go big because in a 12-man league, I got spots that just aren't producing, and I'm looking for guys on the waiver wire, and it's hit or miss on the waiver wire. So I get a prospect. If I can grab him and he works, well, then that's a huge win for me. And if he doesn't, he's just like all the other outfielders out there that I can go out and drop and bring in another guy that's, hitting 2 for 10 or whatever else is going on in the universe at the time. I've got Riley Green on at least one of my teams, and I was too late on O'Neal Cruz as well, working to go get him. But I like watching for those guys. There's 3 guys that are supposedly coming up at some point here in the next week or two to keep an eye on. Kansas City first baseman Vinny Pasquantino. Tampa, actually, their guy came up and back down, like you talked about, Kevin. Jonathan Aranda. And then Milwaukee has a pitcher, Ethan Small. Fantasy-wise, I don't think he's going to do much this year. He's probably going to be more middle relief kind of guy this year. So depending on what your league scores, probably not much to watch for. But those are the next prospects kind of to watch for coming up there as well. Let's get into ads and drops while we still have the time to do it. Ads, let's talk about who you're looking to add. I've got some guys that maybe more people know that might be sitting around, but let's go ahead and start off with Nick this time. Guys that you're looking at adding to your team or would suggest other people add.
Well, my computer's slow, so let me go to Dan. Bail me out.
First guy, Isaac Paredes. He has been raking for the Rays.
He's at 5%, Dan. You're right on, or 6%, something like that. You're right on target with that guy.
Yeah, and he's up now. He's now at 7.7, up 7.4 in the last
Wow.
week.
Okay,
So it just shows
shooting through the roof right there.
he was owned by no one, and he's still owned by no one.
Mhm.
But he's hitting 471 in the last week with 5 home runs, including a
Seems
3
like
home run day
25 home runs in the
against-
last week or so.
Yeah, a 3 home run day against the Yankees. He's on a 5-game hitting streak. Went 6 for 8 this weekend against the Pirates. If you need a quick injection of a corner infielder, or he's second base and third base eligible, so you need an infielder. There's not a hotter one than Isaac Paredes right now, and he's still owned in less than 10% of leagues.
Half of his fantasy points came this week.
Yeah,
Literally.
literally. Yeah.
He had a good 7 days.
Yes, he did. You got any more, Dan?
Pickups. Kevin Biggio is a guy that has hit well this week. He got eligibility at first, second, third, and in the outfield. So he's a guy that if he can get hot, he can, but he hasn't shown it this year. If he can stay hot, he's a guy that could be an interesting pickup. And then Christian Vasquez, Elias Diaz, if you're really looking for a catcher, they're both guys that have hit well in the last week. Christian Vasquez is not normally a guy that hits well, but is in the lineup a lot. And Elias Diaz has the benefit of playing in Colorado. So if you need a catcher, why not go to the Rockies catcher? Because he'll accidentally hit 10 home runs.
How do you accidentally hit 10 runs? 10 home runs.
You
How
hit
do
in
you do that?
Colorado.
Hit up in the
Coors
air in
Field.
Colorado. That's how you do it.
Yeah, hit in Denver, and you can make it
All right.
happen.
All right,
Nick,
I'm ready.
Your computer
Yeah.
unfroze. All right, give us what you got.
Yeah, in my Slim Pickens league, I got Jack Sawinski out of Pittsburgh. He's rostered in my league in 4% of the leagues. He's got 78 total bases, 22 RBIs, two stolen bases. He's okay. He's an outfielder along with Blig Madras again. He's owned in 2.8% of the leagues, and then the guy I like the most here is Alex Kirilloff. He's in 25% of the leagues, and he's hitting 15 total bases, but he can play first base and outfield, and first base is pretty slim. So if you want to throw a guy in there, stream off the wire, I would say Kirilloff.
All right, Kevin. Alex Kirilloff, you taking him?
No, and the reason why I'm not doing that is if I need a first baseman, I'm going to turn to either Patrick Wisdom or Cat's agreeing with me if you hear that. Hunter Dozier is also out there for Kansas City, and these are the kind of guys because they first, third, outfield, and so I like these guys. They're swinging the bat pretty well. And Dan, you mentioned Diaz of the Rockies, because remember tomorrow they return back home, and so you want to get Rockies on your roster if they are in fact at home, and you might want to check and see guys like Connor Joe, McMahon, Rogers. They're probably all owned, but if not, you're going to want to pick them up, even if the Dodgers coming into town. And one pitcher I'll throw into you is Johnny Cueto. He's owned in 14% of leagues, but he's got the Angels upcoming, and so they can't fight right. They can't swing the bats right, and so I'm going to get somebody that's going to face the Angels until they figure out what in the world's going on in Anaheim.
All right, man. First base is sounding slimmer than I was thinking. Something thrown out tonight.
How about Andrew Vaughn?
Andrew Vaughn I already have, so there's no reason for me to go out and get him.
I got a couple names that I've seen in leagues available. Javi Baez has suddenly popped up in a couple leagues as available. He's had a rough season.
You're right, Vince. Right on.
What I'm doing is watching these guys. I've been watching Kevin in our league. I'm basically picking up the guys Kevin's dropping.
Let me guess, Vince. You'll be picking up Rowdy Tellez by Tuesday morning.
2 home runs today. But
that's the part about fantasy baseball that just You know, you make a decision and he hits two home runs. That's just the way it works.
Yeah, I watched Kevin. He's been dry. He dropped Turner, Justin Turner earlier in the year. I grabbed him.
Yep, I saw that.
Somebody else that I don't remember. Somebody else you dropped. I went ahead and grabbed. Last week you said I just cut so and so, and I went and immediately claimed them. Or 2 weeks ago, when was on that.
So keep my trap shut. Is that what you're telling me?
So keep an eye out for guys that are getting dropped. That maybe you're having a rough stretch. But I feel like a guy like Javi Baez is going to eventually come back around. He's starting to get that nasty streak in him, which could be good for him. I think we talked about this guy in the past, Michael Harris, the second outfielder in Atlanta. I picked him up several weeks ago. Has been well worth it, but he's still only owned by, I think, 30-something or 40-something% of leagues right now, so he may be available. Isaac Paredes, you already mentioned. Tyrone Taylor in Milwaukee. Lorenzo Cain gets released a couple weeks ago, last week, I guess it was, which means Tyrone Taylor is going to be seeing a lot more time getting bats, and he's had a really decent season so far. So if you're in a deep league, check out the Brewers and Tyrone Taylor if he's available. He's going to be better than several guys that are available in the waiver wire, but just keep an eye out. He's going to get more appearances. So no matter what his stats are now, he's going to have more opportunity in the days to come. Let's get to drops. Who are we giving up on and time to let go of? Kevin, let's start with you. We'll go around that way this time.
All right. So I'm going to start off with some pitchers right here, drops. The guy I'm going to start off with, Patrick Corbin. Now, I need someone to explain to me what in the world is this guy still on 35% of roster? I drafted him. I said, okay, he's going to be the guy that's the number one pitcher for Washington. I'll give him a shot. He went out in his first start and pretty much just laid it all on the field and not in a good way. So I dropped him the first week. Okay? Dropped him right there and then. And he hasn't gotten any better. And his ERA is 6.60. That's got to be one of the – for a guy that's been on a roster all season, that is just abysmal. And so he needs to go. Anybody that's got him on your roster, you need to do better. Get rid of Patrick Corbin. Another guy, Hunter Green, he has not pitched well of late.
Speaking of prospects.
Okay, speaking of prospects, he's a guy that was pretty exciting, but this is what he's done.
But what team does he play for?
5.6. Well, there you go. As you always said, Vince.
I told you.
And then,
don't draft.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And you could pretty much put that on the bulletin board right behind you and leave that up there because you're 100% right. And another guy that's Paul Blackburn. He's owned in 68% of leagues, and he's given up 7 runs in his last 4 innings. And he's got the Yankees up next. That is that's just a mixture that is explosive all over it. So there's no chance I'm sending that guy out to face the Yankees if I have him on my roster.
Nick, who are you dropping this week?
Oh, who am I dropping this week? Well, we're going to stick with pitchers. We're going to Graham Ashcraft out of Cincinnati. Right.
Okay. There you go again. Yep.
He's 4-1. He's 4-1. Got 27 Ks, but he's got a 3.27 ERA. So he's letting guys on. But yes, the 624 game against the Giants, he had 27 points. So he's a hit or miss, but he's rostered in 12.5% of the ESPN leagues. Then we go to Santiago Espinal. He's rostered in 42.5 of leagues. He's batting .261 with 5 home runs. And in the last 5 or 6 games or so, he's got 2, -1, -1, 4, -1. So I'm not a mathematician, but he's got more minuses than pluses. So we're going to take him off.
If you drop him, Nick, in my league, I'm picking him up the next day.
Okay.
I'm just telling you right now.
I'm not in your league, so
okay.
so we could. So
he's been hitting the ball until recently all season, and that was one of the things. He's number 2 in the All-Star voting, which you might have already talked about the All-Star voting. I don't get that, but he's still the number 2. But he's owned in less than 50% of leagues. That's got to change because he's going to get it back together.
I'm with Nick. I'm staying away from him at this point.
So and then the last guy I want to bring up is Mackenzie Gore. He's
I was going to bring him up. You go ahead, Nick.
Okay, so Mackenzie's Gore, he's 4-3, 65 Ks, 3.34 ERA. In his last 5 starts, okay, he scored a 25, a 27, a -16, a -20, and then he scored a 12. So again, he is up and down, down. So do I pitch this guy today or do I don't? I mean, when you're getting a -20, that's not good.
That's hard to rally back from.
But when you're getting a +27, that's fantastic.
That is fantastic. Dan, we're running up on time. Who do you have that you're dropping?
First guy, Harrison Bader. He is a fantastic fielder. He's really fast, but I promise you, you do not need steals that bad to roster to warrant rostering Harrison Bader. Yeah. I promise you don't need the steals that bad. He's hitting 160 over last week. He's only stolen 1 base since June 12th. So he's not even giving you the speed that you have him on your roster for.
I got my straw for that.
I wish he could hit. If he could hit, he'd be one of the most exciting players in baseball, but he just can't hit. And he's proven that now over multiple years. And another guy that's been wildly frustrating for me is Jose Barrios. And he reared his ugly head again today.
Yep.
8 earned and 2 2/3.
I saw you dropped him.
Yeah, he's 3 great starts to start off June, and then his last 2 starts, 6 2/3, 14 earned runs. No, thank you. That
I think I've exercised a little bit more patience with him.
His ERA is 5.86 on the year now. It's tough to trust him. I'm holding him in my other league, but I saw his start today, and I was ready to throw my phone against the wall when I saw that he only went 2 2/3.
Well, I'm dropping a guy Nick mentioned he has on his team, Miles Straw. Again, you get him for the stolen bases. Everything else has just not been there. So I'm dropping him. Adam Frazier, he's been brought up on this show before. Kevin Wilson's favorite player of all time. But Adam Frazier's getting dropped as well. Most people have gotten on board with that. Both of those guys are being rostered right now in the 30 percentile range. And so a lot of people are getting off of those guys. There's just not enough there. We are out of time. So let's get to the shout outs and where we're at and all those kinds of things. Dan, head of the Belly Up Baseball, tell everybody where they can find you at.
Find me on Twitter at DanDemico14. It's not a happy place right now. Bryce Harper's out indefinitely, but somehow the Phillies have still managed to win the last 2 games. Also follow Belly Up Baseball on Twitter and Instagram at Belly Up Baseball.
Nick.
You can find me walking the streets of Orlando. You can find me in the Burger Kings. But if you want to find me online, okay, you can find me on Twitter at Penn Flanders, and you can find me at tssfantasy.com, and you can also find me right here on this show on Belly Up Fantasy Live.
Kevin Wilson, our fearless leader. Where can everybody find you at?
Well, Vince, it's been a busy week for me this past week. Did the Belly Up Fantasy football show, and then I was on your show, and then I did the NBA draft. I was live while that was going on, and I wrote an article that went out Thursday, and now I'm here. But just so all y'all know, vacation has begun, so don't be looking for a whole lot to come out from this direction for the next week or so. But you can always get me at Kevin62 WILSEA on Twitter.
And I'm on the Sports Stove podcast, anywhere you get your podcast. Great episodes coming this week. I'm getting a Nashville sports talk legend, George Plaster, coming on the show Wednesday. We'll talk with him Wednesday night. Me and my dad will be back live Tuesday night as well. And just dropped an episode earlier today as well. So catch that. A lot of stuff coming up very soon from the Sports Stove and the Sports Stove Local Hour, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for tuning in to the latest edition of Fantasy Belly Up Fantasy Baseball Live. Thanks for tuning in. And no show next week due to the holiday weekend, but we'll be back in 2 weeks for you. And we will see you then. Have a good one.